I didn't actually learn to sew until I was 49, but I feel I was perhaps destined to follow this path.
Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina, I'm the host here, and today I have a wonderful fiber artist, Katy Rundle. Welcome to Fiberchats.
Thank you, Irina.
Well, I have to tell you, like every once in a while, I just scroll through Instagram and somebody will stop me in my track. And it's usually something very unusual, unique, something I haven't seen before. And you were definitely one of those artists that I saw it. And the paintings, I don't even know what you call them. Can you call it painting? Because it looks like a painting, but it's not. What do you
Yeah, that's an interesting question, really, because I just did an exhibition and I called it Painting with Textiles because they often get mistaken for paintings at first glance. And then it takes a bit of getting a bit closer and looking before you realise, oh no, that's a collage actually of pieces of patterned fabric and stitch.
Well, I was just like, I was stopped in my tracks and I was like, I had to zoom in. I had to see up close all those textures and stitches. And I was watching you like in the reel, actually like freehand stitching it. And I was like, how? But how? Like, so I have so many questions about your process and how you achieve that, like, the feeling of light, the feeling of three-dimension for all the animals, how you start, how you find the fabrics, all of this. We're going to talk about all of that. But I want to start with, like, at what age did you feel yourself an artist?
Always, I suppose. At school, I always want my art to be noticed, let's say. And, if a painting of mine went up at the wall when I was at primary school, I was chuffed to bits. So art was always there as a passion, as something I really wanted to do. But it was not seen as a practical option for me as choosing my options, as a teenager for my subjects at school. It was, no, you need to follow a career that will give you a regular income, give you a proper career path, keep art as a hobby.
Right.
So it's always been there.
You have your grandmother, I've heard, and your mom were very crafty, and your grandmother was a seamstress.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit like your childhood memories of like fabrics and what they were making and sewing machines.
Yeah. Well, my mum was one of many children, and so the family was large. And at Christmas, when all the cousins came together, it would always be homemade gifts from my nanny, my grandmother. She would always make us soft toys and things like that, which were always wonderful. I mean, I was a soft toy collector, so for me, I loved those cuddlies. So it started there really, but my mum had obviously grown up at watching her mother stitch professionally her whole life, dressmaking. And so my mum had picked up lots of skills just directly from being with her mother. And she carried that on to making all of my clothes. So I would choose fabric with my mum in shops and we'd look at patterns together. I actually didn't ever learn to dressmake, which was a big regret, but I did grow up in those fabric shops and looking at quality of fabrics with my mum as well as colour, and colour was always really important to me. Even when I was small, it really mattered to me if my socks went with my outfit, things like that. So, but I didn't learn to dressmake, but that's where fabric, sort of a love of fabric and colour came from. My mum grew up in London, so iconic shops like Liberty of London. We'd go there if there was a special occasion outfit that my mum might be making for me. So, that's where it all started, that love of fabric, although I didn't use it at all in my art until I was much older.
Right. Well, but my grandmother was also a seamstress. Like, ironically enough, we have a lot of parallels in our stories. And my mom was excellent at sewing, but she didn't love it. She sort of like, she had to do it because there was very sparse resources and it was hard to buy clothes. So she was sewing, but like without the passion for it. Let's put it this way.
Yes.
But both of them were perfectionists. So like I remember like I studied sewing in elementary school. Like I think I was 9 and we were making something like apron or
Yeah.
something
Yes.
simple like this. And I remember bringing it home and being so like proud of my achievement. And my mom would be like, yeah, but you have to work on
Yeah.
your stitches, being straight. And it
Yes.
was like always very discouraging because like I wasn't good enough at that. And when I'm looking at your creations, I mean, it's the stitches go just crazy in each direction. Like, do you ever think about like perfection and like, is it neat enough? Is it like, where's the art and craft meet each other there?
I mean, that's an interesting question. I'm not necessarily thinking about neatness, but it's a comment that I often get from people looking at my art. Oh, you're stitching so even. I think, is it? Because it's free motion stitching. It's just how fast I move the fabric is the size of the stitches, and I don't think they are always even by any means whatsoever. Um, but I do like a good finish, and I suppose that has rubbed off from my mum. My mum was like you say, your mum, and it was all about the quality of the work. And so, although I've never really thought of it, I suppose that is true. I am looking for, um, in a way, I'm looking for a seamless flow from one piece of fabric into another, and yeah, the texture and you know, one thing that I'm not sure that I like about my work so much is that attention to everything being flat, and that in fact not getting a lot of texture in and not being a bit freer about not worrying about wrinkles. They do worry me. I will rework something to make sure I'm happy. So yeah, it's not something I'd thought about, but yes, you're right, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know what I found also interesting that I watched one of your reels. I think you were making a blue teeth, and you mentioned how you reworked that piece numerous times and you had to like cut the legs shorter and make the head bigger and like remove the part of the head from one side and then add part of the head from another side. Like, how do you know when to stop with a piece? How do you know when to stop fussing over it?
That's good. Another good question. I don't. Is the short answer. I actually don't know when to stop. But I often will just stop because I'm sick of it. I'm sick of messing with it. So yeah, the blue tip. I'll start off with a sketch. I'll sketch out what my subject is, and then build up the collage on top of my stitch on that base fabric that I've drawn on. And I'll obviously think when I've started the collage that my drawing is correct. And sometimes it slightly alters with me collaging on top of it, or maybe my initial drawing wasn't actually completely correct. But when I put my collage together, I'll stand back from it, and sometimes I'll think just not something not quite right. And then, yeah, in that case of that bird, yeah, I did chop and change it a bit because I felt like the body was too big, and yeah, the proportions weren't quite right. Um, and then I stitched it all onto a background fabric, which I didn't like in the end. So then I cut it out from that fabric background. I don't usually faff about quite so much, to be fair. But I was creating that while I was also running a sort of solo show. So I was sort of in a gallery all day, every day. And so working in a small area and trying to create small things that weren't going to take up a lot of space in there. Yeah.
Well, when I'm thinking about being an artist, right, there is two sides to it. It's one thing is what inspires you, what gives you idea, what brings you joy, and like, and getting it to the point when you are satisfied with it somewhat, I guess. I don't know if we ever totally satisfied with the end product. But another side of it is you sell your work. And I imagine it's much faster to make something smaller than to make a huge, enormous textile painting. How much do you worry about resale value of what you're making? Like, does that pushes you towards making something, or the idea comes first? What comes first, like the practical side of it or the idea and inspiration?
Definitely the idea comes first. But I would be lying if I didn't think going on, the history of what's sold before, thinking, oh, that's popular subject. So that can influence things, of course. But the idea and the subject will usually come first. And there's always a story behind what I've chosen to portray and why. But size-wise, I much prefer to work large, and that was it was in a way a bit of a risk that I took, because I had been working on pieces sort of around that sort of size, and that was sort of the maximum I'd gone to. And then I used to work at some studios where I had a really large studio, and we were doing the county sort of open studios event over 2 weeks, and I knew that I was going to be in the studio with a lot of space for 2 weeks every day. And I thought, I'm just going to create something big that I've always wanted to do. So I started creating this large peacock, and working large with the patterned fabrics that I use, really, it just enables me to use the patterns much more freely and use more of the pattern. So I really, really enjoyed that. And at that time, pre-COVID, was it pre-COVID? No, I think it might have been early after COVID. But anyway, the large pieces that I created over that time, they actually sold really well. And I stuck with making large things for a while. I've gone back really to making smaller pieces, because that's like a lot of my small pieces are currently in a gallery in Wiltshire, and because they've asked me for smaller pieces, because they're sort of saying in the current economic climate they're going to be easier to sell. But
talking of galleries, like, do you have hard time parting with your pieces? Because first of all, like, I feel like every artist dreams about this like enormous exhibition, and every time you sell something you have to either replace it or you have to come up with a new idea. Is it tough to say goodbye to your pieces?
I've always been delighted when somebody falls in love with something and wants it. But yeah, there are pieces that I've thought, oh, I'm going to miss that, because I do tend to put my art up around in the house. So I get used to having certain pieces, and it's strange. I've moved back recently to Dorset, where I lived 10 years ago, and I did this seascape of Durdle Door, which is a famous landscape for the south coast on the Jurassic coast. And I'd had it in my living room for nearly 10 years. And I had taken it to art fairs and people had loved it. And I'd actually sold quite a few prints of it, but no one had ever bought the original. And then out of the blue, last year, somebody bought it. Was it last year or the year before? Anyway, actually someone from the US bought it, which I would never thought would happen. And that was quite a wrench, actually, letting that one go, because it had become part of my life. And it had those connections with moving to Dorset from Kenya, where we had lived for 2 years. And it was about me finding happiness in Dorset and realising how lucky I was to live here now again, after being a bit sad about leaving Kenya.
Well, let's talk about Kenya, because I'm just fascinated with that part of your life. What influence do you think it had on you, not just in terms of like all the wild animals that you took pictures of and you're making nowadays, but also like in terms of colors and fabrics and all of that?
Yeah, well, it's interesting in that when we went to Kenya, I still hadn't ever made any piece of textile art.
Right.
So I went there having had a fairly long career in our National Health Service. And so moving to Kenya, it was with my husband's work. It allowed me a break from my career. In fact, I wasn't allowed to work in Kenya. That was a rule, as far as I wasn't allowed to take work from local population, which is absolutely fair enough. But that actually allowed me freedom to do art, which I hadn't had a lot of time for because of young children and career. So it marked a huge step change for me to be able to have the time to do art, to be inspired by the landscapes, the cultures, the wildlife. And I took some classes with other artists, painting and drawing. and I met an incredible textile artist out there who just showed me really the possibilities of working with fabric in art. I'd done a lot of collage art when I was a student, so a long time before that, but I used to create sort of landscapes and dreamscapes with collages of coloured paper. I'd never thought of using fabric, but yeah, it just lit me up, this idea of using beautiful patterned fabrics.
Well, I remember, like, I also sort of like, I started knitting about 9 years ago. So part of me feels like I've wasted like all those years not knitting, and I could have, you know,
Yeah.
do you ever get that feeling that like if you started 20 years earlier, if your grandmother taught you how to sew properly, like
Yeah.
all the things you could have achieved?
I don't think I would ever have done it when I was younger, the textile art. I think I would have gone down painting route, or yeah, I think probably I would have gone down more that route, maybe, or maybe mixed media. But I don't think I would have gone down, I don't know if that was partly, sort of resistance to doing things that my mother and my grandmother were doing. And they were so good at it. I just asked them to do it. If I needed anything making, they would happily make things for me, including, soft furnishings at home, as well as dresses for events and things like that. But so yes, I definitely think I would have loved to have gone to art school, and it's never too late. And I would have loved to have done like an art foundation course and explored all different types of art, and that would have been amazing to have done that. But I also think that definitely the story of your life is what comes out in your art later. So whenever you start, it's all your life experience will be expressed through what you do. So
Right.
yeah, there's no point looking back. Just keep looking forward.
Well, I love that. I find it very inspiring about you that you started doing this new to you form of art at like the age of 49. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, and a lot of, we live in the world when people think like you come to a certain age and it's too late for you to do that. And you come to a certain age and it's like best part of your life is over. I remember turning 40 and I was talking to a very good friend of mine and I said, you know, the best part of my life is over. And
No.
she laughed at me and she said, well, until you get to the end, you don't know which part was the best, you know, which part,
Yes.
you know, so,
Yeah.
and now that like I'm much older than that, I'm thinking like how silly it was of me to even think that, you know.
Yeah.
And the fact that like you worked most of your life as a nurse and then you became an artist, like it just really shows that it's never too late. In fact,
No.
I published my first sweater pattern at the age of 55 and I named it Never Too
Brilliant.
Late because I
Yeah.
thought it was like, you know, it's never too late to try something new, you know.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
Well, let's talk about something that I also discovered through my knitting. So when I first started knitting, I went to the local Michael's or like, you know, craft store and I bought some cheap acrylic yarn and I started knitting with it. And then slowly I discovered hand spun yarns. I discovered hand dyed yarns. I discovered all different types of fiber. And suddenly like my collection of yarn, as you can tell, start growing.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your fabric acquisition. Like how do you buy fabric? What speaks to you? What makes you want to buy something?
It's all about color and pattern. And people assume that I have a room full of fabric or, stacks of it. I actually don't. I do have a lot of fabric, but in volume, it's not that huge because, I buy what, the quilters call fat quarters. So, the pieces of fabric I have are only that deep. But this piece will be used in lots of different pieces of work. And this is how my fabric, I'll look for a little piece of pattern within the design to build up whatever piece of art I'm creating. So this is an example of one of the drawers. it looks a complete mess because there's some on top, but generally speaking, my fabrics, I keep them sort of like a filing cabinet, like this, so I can flick through the different designs. And I have four of these drawers, and then one other drawer in a chest of drawers, and that's all for my fabrics for my art. But obviously there are loads and loads of different designs within
Well, when
each.
you let's take this elephant behind you.
Yes.
Can you walk me through the process? Because I'm just like flabbergasted by the amount of work that goes into that collage. But like let's say you woke up with the idea of creating that elephant. Does it start with the drawing? Does it start with the picture that you took at some like past
Yeah.
like
Well, there's a memory behind it, in that, yes, I lived in Kenya for 2 years. My mother actually made a trip by herself because she was widowed, but she came out and she stayed with us for a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks in Kenya. And one of her happiest times was sitting at this watering hole in the Aberdares in Kenya and watching the elephants in the evening all come in to drink. And I had these two photographs of the mother elephant and the calf elephant between the back legs. And it was actually my mum's last ever holiday. We didn't know it was going to be, but a couple of years later, she became terminally ill. She didn't ever get to do another holiday, and she said it was the best holiday of her life. And so it has a lot of happy memories of that moment, of that time when she was out with us. And it's also very symbolic because it's a mother and calf. And I called the piece Security because it's about that mother's security, and that calf is like tucked between her legs there and under her body. And it's about being safe and your mum making you safe and always being there for you. So there's the story behind it. And then I've got these two photographs that I like the look of. And so it started with me. I'd made a few large pieces at that time. So it started with me, getting a big piece of calico and literally sketching out with a pencil onto the calico the outline of my drawing. And then after that, I look at my photograph, and I always sort of look in the edit and color saturation, and I'll whack up the color saturation to maximum in my image. And suddenly all these colors come out. I didn't imagine it was going to turn out these colors. In fact, I was thinking it was going to be more oranges and greens. And anyway, this is how it developed. So I'm looking at color, and then I'm looking at the fabrics that I have that I think the designs within them could mimic the textures. And I'm also looking at having different tones to, as you say, try and create a 3D idea. So this same piece that I was showing you, say, of the cabbage leaves, there are lovely lines where am I showing you? Here. Lovely lines within that there that could really create texture. Or this is another print that, is quite an obvious one that could create texture of the skin with the wrinkles. So anyway, I'll get out all the fabrics that I think might work in the colors that I want to use, and I put them all around my drawing of my calico on a big table. And it all starts with me just being drawn to one piece of pattern and cutting it out and placing it down. And then the collage will just grow from there. But when you're doing something big with a big body like that elephant, it requires quite a lot of fabric. And so there are periods where I get completely stuck, where I'm just like, I don't know what I'm going to use in the next piece, because I don't buy the fabric for the art, if you like. I buy the fabrics that I love, and then I want to make them work into whatever piece I'm doing.
I mean, for me, the difference between and I'm bringing knitting into that just because it's the opposite of fabric, because you can knit something and then you don't like it and you can just frog it and reuse that yarn. Whereas the cutting fabric sounds so final,
Yes. And I think a lot of people who love the same sort of fabrics as me find it very difficult to cut them. But I have bags. I haven't got any here, but I have bags of little pieces that I've cut that haven't worked in a section. I keep everything. I never waste any fabric. So like I've got this little piece here, and I would never throw that away because that'll be useful somewhere. But I obviously cut that out specifically for something that then decided it didn't work, so took it out again. But yeah, I've got a few little pieces like that. So yeah, like that little piece again might seem mad, but I keep everything. Yeah, and because I know that the printing and making textiles isn't great for the planet, so I just don't want to be wasting anything. And
I mean, are you surprised at the end of it, or even at the middle part of that, as to what's coming out from under your hands, basically? Because like if you
yeah,
don't have the exact picture of what you're trying to achieve, I'm imagining
no,
it's like sort of painting as you go and coming up with new ideas and new colors.
it is definitely. Yeah, I like I say, I didn't imagine the elephant to turn out quite so multicolored, but that's what it turned out like with the fabrics that I had, and using shapes, of within patterns to try and create form. So I'm using the shapes in a way are sort of like drawing in that, yeah, they're the pencil marks that I would have made in drawing the elephant and creating shapes is using the patterns for that. That's one of the absolute joys for me. I just love it's like sort of creating a jigsaw puzzle with patterns. And when I find a piece of pattern that works really well for what I want it to achieve, I find that really exciting. Each to their own, because people often say to me, "Oh, you must have so much patience." And I always say, "Well, I wouldn't do it if it needed patience. I do it just because I absolutely love it and I get a kick out of doing it. So, aren't I lucky?"
It's funny because this is another comment I get all the time. And
Yeah,
they say like, I'm actually the most impatient person on the planet, but knitting gives me patience because I love it so much. So I'm like, I'm losing myself in it. So
yeah. Creating is just, I mean, it's great fun, isn't it? And it's very rewarding in itself and satisfying. I love it. Yeah.
quite recently you came up with announcement that your breast cancer came back.
Yeah.
Um, when and this is the second time you had it, and it's different kind of cancer, and you just had to have a mastectomy. So when you go through this tough time, do you find that you have space in your head to create? Does it give you any peace? Does it give you any comfort? Or do you have to stay away from it for a time?
It's been a different experience on each occasion. The first time, the treatment's been completely different because the first time I had sort of fairly minor surgery, just a lumpectomy and local excision, and then I went into chemotherapy for 6 months. And during that time of chemotherapy, my brain felt like it was fried a lot of the time. I was befuddled and yeah, it was difficult, but I actually had a commission to create, and actually having that to do was really important, I think, in a way. And I could throw myself into it, but in a very, very slow way, into what I could deal with, day by day. So it's a very slow process. And I look back on that piece that I made, and it's a much loved commission for people that I know. So I see it sometimes when I go to their house. And I think that was really important for me to feel like I still had a purpose at that time, although I was, a mum to fairly youngish children. So there was my purpose as well. But creativity definitely was therapeutic, I think, for me then, and got me through those months with a feeling of productivity and achievement as well. I think it was very good for me. And this second time, I actually stalled a bit, but other lots of things happening in life at the same time because we've only recently moved to this house, and there's lots to do in the house, and settling everybody in, and I don't know. I have found it difficult to be creative in the last few weeks, but there's been a lot of uncertainty about, had my cancer spread from the original. So I was very frightened that, oh, maybe I've got secondary cancer, maybe it's incurable. And then there was, no, this is actually a new cancer and it hasn't spread. And then it was, but we just need to scan your whole body to check. So then that whole doubt then came back, like, oh, what are they going to find on a body scan? I'm waiting for those weeks. So yeah, there was just a lot of anxiety and not sleeping. But very fortunately for me, they haven't found any spread. And they went ahead and did the mastectomy 4 weeks ago. And I just need to do some, take estrogen blockers now for a few years. But yeah, I think all the worry of the last few weeks is I came to a bit of a full stop. But in the last week, I've just started getting back into stitching, which is great. And I'm starting to feel more like myself again. Yeah. But I mean, everyone's different in the way that they react to situations. And yeah, I do feel lucky that I've had it found on screening twice, and lucky that we have the NHS here. We are very, very fortunate in the UK for the treatment that's on tap when we need it.
Right. You were very vocal about it on Instagram. You actually came on Instagram and you said, I don't know if I should share it, if I shouldn't share it, but then you went ahead. And I really appreciate that raw honesty. And, I don't know if I have anything interesting to say. I don't know if I can share it with you, if I should share it with you, but then you go ahead and do it. And I think it gives courage to a lot of people. And I know that a lot of people deal with cancer and a lot of people deal with this, being scared and uncertain. And I think you give courage to them and, make them feel like they're not alone in this battle. So,
well, I hope it was a positive message, because my message really was, make sure you do go and get your screening, because it's so easy to put it off when you're in a busy, life is busy, other things come along. But yeah, so that, I was worried about it, whether, how it would be perceived. You just think, does it, I didn't want to get attention in the way of, I'm not looking for people to say, oh, you poor you, because that isn't how I feel. I really don't feel like that. I worked in palliative care for many years, people much worse situations than me, much, much younger than me. I really appreciate the fact that I'm nearly 60. Next month, I'm 60. And, I think, gosh, you're really lucky. So many people aren't. So, yeah.
Well, when I'm looking at your paintings, I always find this like ray of sunshine. I feel like sun and spots of sun and the rays of sun are very important in your creations. Like you really pay attention to that and it brings you happiness. How do you find this inner joy in life? Like when life is not easy, obviously, and a lot of people who have it much easier and who don't have anything going on in their life, and they're so gloomy and they complain, and you find that rain of sunshine everywhere. How do you do that?
Well, I think also, from a composition point of view, I'm always looking for the light. And I think, if there isn't a light and a contrast, then it wouldn't interest me to portray. But like I say, everything that's happened in my life and in any artist's life or creative person's life will feed through, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. And I think, definitely working with people facing the end of their lives for all those years, my art is definitely about trying to capture those moments of joy. So, there'll always be, a moment of joy in what I'm trying to create. And as I say, maybe light is part of that for me, because I think you'll have seen in that reel of mine, for me, this house has some shutters on the downstairs windows. Opening those shutters, letting the light in, it's just, that's a huge joy to me, and it's a simple thing. But I think everything gets just put into perspective when you work with people in more difficult circumstances, or I have done. I mean, I haven't done palliative care now for probably 14 years or so, something like that. But it stays with you, and obviously we all have friends and family who have situations where they're maybe facing end of life. So that's just part of life, isn't it? So if we can try and put a positive spin on things, then great. There isn't always that ability, but yeah.
Well, I love that series that you created of this place that you took on your walk when you walk your dog, and there is this almost like a tunnel, and at the beginning
Yeah.
it's like dark and then there is light at the end of that. And I saw picture of that walkway, and it just, it really amazes me that you took something that you walk through everyday life, and a lot of people don't pay attention to the surroundings. Like they will take their dog for a walk without paying attention to that like really beautiful spot, and they'll just treat it as like part of the walk, and you take it and you create art out of it, and the whole, there is a whole series of paintings that you created from that one spot.
Yeah.
Can you like let me into your head? How does your brain work? Like how do you spot those places, and how do you keep a diary of sorts? Do you jot it down that I want to create something from this spot, or like this plant, or how the light shines on this leaf? How does it work?
How does it work? Well, I mean, I think first of all, I probably have cancer to thank for that outlook in a way, because when I first had cancer, there's nothing like thinking that your life might be shortened significantly. There's nothing like that for you to suddenly focus on what really matters and what brings you joy, and trying to find those moments of joy, especially when you're going through a long treatment where you're feeling lousy, perhaps. But yes, so how does my mind work? So that walkway, I always found it really, really special, just because of the way that nature was growing around you. It's sort of like a nature's hug. And I really enjoyed the fact that, like say, you're walking towards light. So I think doing it every day made me realize when I particularly enjoyed it at, particular times of day, particularly when the sun was rising in the east and there were particular spotlights coming through. And basically what I do is I just take loads of photos on my phone of anything that I see that I like the look of. And sometimes I don't look at them again for years, but I'll favorite certain photographs if I really like the composition or the light within it. And I just wanted to do a series of my favorite walks with my dog, and that's what I really enjoyed doing then.
Tell me like what's in the works. Like, do you have any plans for the future that you haven't started yet, but like your brain is brainstorming about it?
Yeah, there's a few ideas percolating. I mean, the next thing is that I need to get on with a commission, which is actually, it's funny how things line up sometimes beautifully, in that I recently went up to Scotland after my surgery, and I've got a commission to do a Scottish landscape. And so I'm really looking forward to start exploring that with the photographs I've been sent, and trying to, bring together a lovely composition for that person. So that's the immediate next thing. Then workshops. I've started doing workshops, and I'm lucky to have the space in our new home to run them from home for small groups. So they're going to take me through till sort of November time. In September and October, I'll be doing the workshops. But as far as sort of artwork and doing a series of works, I'm really inspired by where I stayed in Scotland on this Isle of May, where there were seabird colonies. And I do really enjoy creating birds. So that's one possibility. Another possibility that I've been thinking about for a couple of years now, which I'd like to do more of, is sort of, I I like to do every so often different kinds of art. It really inspires you, doesn't it, creatively to try different things. So I've done life drawing classes, and I've got lots of lovely life drawings. And I'm a huge fan of Klimt paintings, and I think a lot of the fabrics that I use remind people of Klimt paintings. I love his landscapes as well, and I really enjoy landscapes. But I think I'd like to do something with my life drawings with fabric as well. I've done that once before, as a project within the art class and the life drawing. But I think I'd like to do more with that. But this morning, I got up at my neighbour invited me to go on a walk to watch the sunrise from a hill near here. And so I was up at 3:45 this morning, which is not like me at all. But we walked up this hill and watched the sunrise over these beautiful countryside. And now I'm completely inspired by that. So you get distracted all the time. You think about doing one thing, then something else distracts you. But landscapes are great fun. I do enjoy them.
Is it hard for you to teach others how to make something like you? Because, I mean, I feel like art is so individual.
Yes. And I think that's a balance, isn't it? Because you're not trying to create people that are doing the same work as you. What I see my workshops are as I see them as enablers and confidence givers. So I'll do something a set thing. So I've done a couple of different animal workshops, but I've done a bumblebee one several times. And it's a great sort of starter workshop for someone who hasn't done this kind of sort of collage with fabric before. But I always ask people to bring their own fabrics that they have already. I don't want people to go out and buy new stuff. Just bring what you have that might work. And I bring out my bags of all these little offcuts as well. And then we look at how we can use each person's fabric within their design. Because I want people to go away and think, oh, I did that. What else can I do with what I have already? So, and for the landscape, I haven't done a landscape workshop yet, but I've got an idea in my head of quite a simple landscape idea, because it'll just be a 2-day workshop, but a simple landscape. Again, I want people just to explore how they're using their fabrics and to go away and think about their own compositions. And but I don't want to create, people who can, I don't want everyone to come and make an identikit piece, basically. I want them to go away thinking, oh, I can do things with this.
Are you ever surprised by their work and like
oh yeah
newness of it?
Yeah, there's been some outstanding work, and you just think, wow, that's incredible. They're going to fly if they want to carry on with this. They're going to do amazing with it. Definitely it's good fun. I do enjoy teaching.
Well, I'm gonna put all the information for people to discover more about you in the description of this video. And to be honest, I know that I'm gonna be amazed by your future works, because every time I see something new you created, my mind is just blown. So I can't wait to see what else you're gonna create. And I wish you a lot of health and a lot of long years ahead of you, so you can create more beautiful works, because you do make this world a better place, a more beautiful place.
So nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much for being my guest today. I find you very inspiring, and I hope my audience will as well. And all the best of wishes to you.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you, Katy.
I'll start with one little piece of pattern and place it down, and it grows from there. I never know how a piece will develop. The end product is as much a revelation to me as it is to anybody else looking at it.